way you did it.
We're going to need a bigger room.
Perfect. Okay.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here during a busy holiday week, and happy Thanksgiving to those all across Washington State. This is a time where we gather together with our families and friends and spend more time than normal thinking about all of the people in our communities who do not have as much as others. And that spirit is embodied year-round by Washington's housing providers working across what is known the continuum of care to help people out of homelessness and into permanent housing. But in contrast to that spirit of community, the Trump administration is illegally undermining that program. The federal government is trying to pull the rug out from under Washington housing providers who serve our most vulnerable residents. In violation of the law, in violation of congressional intent, and the Department of own regulations, HUD is drastically reducing the amount of grant funds that can be used for permanent supportive housing. HUD is also arbitrarily nixing providers' eligibility, not based on their expertise or their professionalism, but whether or not they serve jurisdictions that essentially criminalized being unhoused. They've also added new bureaucratic hurdles that have nothing to do with challenges that we are facing in housing and homelessness, such as adding a requirement that providers only acknowledge two genders. That is why just moments ago this morning, we filed a new federal lawsuit in the District of Rhode Island to challenge this unlawful and unconstitutional and un-American action. Congress has recognized that homelessness is a personal crisis that requires immediate stabilization and continuing support to reverse. However, the Trump administration's cruel decision carelessly upends one of the nation's best programs for stabilizing people in vulnerable situations. This isn't how we treat people in Washington, and we won't let the federal government do this to the people of this state either. Lives are literally at risk by this decision. Providers in our state receive $120 million annually under this program. These funds help people in Washington going through some of the most difficult situations that you can possibly imagine. We're talking about survivors of domestic violence, families struggling with chronic homelessness, people that are exiting treatment facilities or the foster care system. But the changes that HUD is attempting to make will throw so many people into crisis. People will be forced to re-enter the shelter system, hospitals, jails, and behavioral crisis facilities, straining to get by in this moment. Our housing and homeless service providers rely on a patchwork of funding sources to make it possible to serve others, including the federal funding that is the subject of this program through the Continuum of Care grants. But in 2025, if a policy is good, if a policy is helpful, if the government is serving some of the most vulnerable people rather than those special interests, odds are that the Trump administration is going to try to kill it. That's what they're doing here by completely changing how funds can be spent and who gets them based on evidence-free and plainly political calculations. HUD has a long-standing policy across administrations encouraging housing-first approaches, which provides stable housing without preconditions. These policies are proven to improve housing stability and public health. But now the agency has abruptly reversed support of this policy, ignoring the will of Congress. Tens of thousands of people will likely have nowhere to live come 2026. It is as if this policy comes straight out of a Charles Dickens story. People don't sign up for this work if they're not passionate about it. Providers certainly don't get rich doing this kind of help, but they do transform their neighbors' lives and make our communities healthier and stronger. And I am grateful for the transformative power of Housing First policies and for the leaders all across this state, including many people who are here with me today, who are working to impact the lives of individuals who are dealing with this crisis. They know very well that the harm these changes will bring to Washington, and I'm happy to have them here to give some remarks as well. Before we get to their remarks, I want to have one moment of personal privilege to recognize the appointment to the Washington State Supreme Court of one of our best and brightest lawyers in the Attorney General's office. I'm really excited for the state of Washington that Colleen Mellely, who has led our Civil Rights Division since its formation, will be joining the court in January of next year. It's a great appointment for the state of Washington and a bad day for the AG's office. But I want to turn back to this case and allow some of our other folks here to comment on this case, and I'll turn first to Rep. Macri. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I am State Representative Nicole Macri, and in addition to serving in the Washington State Legislature, I have spent the past several decades working here in the Seattle area to provide housing opportunities for thousands of people who've experienced homelessness. I want to thank you, Attorney General Brown, for your leadership in defending Washington's communities. I'm proud to stand here with all of you and your team as you take action to stop an unlawful and deeply harmful federal policy shift from the Trump administration, one that puts thousands of Washingtonians at risk of losing their homes. Let me be clear about what HUD's abrupt change to the continuum of care funding means for our state. Nearly 25,000 people in Washington have stable housing because communities have followed federal guidance. We've built evidence-based programs, we've partnered with landlords, secured scarce units, supported people with complex health conditions, kept families together, we've helped veterans come indoors, and we did it in good faith because HUD has always operated on a predictable renewal framework that has allowed communities to plan and to protect the people who we house. This notice of funding opportunity breaks that promise. The sudden move by HUD to refuse renewal of successful housing programs and to tie eligibility to immigration enforcement, camping bans, and denying that transgender people exist isn't just a policy technicality. It's cruel. It breaks faith with our communities, puts lives in immediate jeopardy, and undermines decades of proven approaches. It tells parents, elders, and veterans their stability can be taken away overnight simply because Washington did what it was asked. It tells our immigrant and transgender neighbors that their lives don't matter. The fallout will be severe. Emergency rooms and shelters, already stretched thin, will see more strain. Local governments cannot predict or budget for these impacts. Relationships with landlords and housing developers, already fragile in a tight market, will be undermined. And the trust we've worked so hard to build with people who have survived trauma and homelessness will be shattered. Washington communities kept their promise. The federal government needs to keep theirs. The Trump administration's actions undermine federal law, jeopardize the safety and stability of thousands of Washington residents, and will increase homelessness. Thanks to the Attorney General's leadership, we're standing up for our neighbors and for our values here in Washington. Our message is simple. People's homes are not political experiments. The federal government has a legal and moral obligation to honor commitments, and Washington is always going to defend our communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Attorney General Brown, and also thank you to your staff for their great work in putting this together. I'm Joe Nguyen, the Director of the Department of Commerce here in Washington State under Governor Ferguson's administration, and we have the privilege of administering the funds for the continuum of care on behalf of Washington State. So I'll just kind of give some practical implications associated with what's happening now at the federal level. And as context, these funds were long-standing, decades in the making, and was actually started by a Republican president under President Bush. So this is not meant to be partisan. This is supposed to be bipartisan, and this work has deep impacts in our jurisdictions here in Washington, but specifically in Seattle and King County as well. And we are certainly sounding the alarms on these NOFOs, mainly because this is either ignorant or cruel in terms of how it is being deployed, and likely a combination of both. So in practice, right now, if by December 15th, providers are not able to work through this process, they may be at a gap and not be able to actually fund some of the work that they're doing. This proviso or this NOFO came out months and months late. Usually this happens in the summertime. You have plenty of time to plan and move forward. The fact that it's coming out literally weeks before Thanksgiving, before the holidays, makes it almost impossible for the funds to be administered. And the most cruel part that I see in terms of attacking permanent supportive housing is that that has been decades-long policy. So by limiting the amount of permanent supportive housing, should this go forward, what could happen is that folks who are severely disabled, folks who have no other option but these resources, could be forced out onto the streets literally right before Christmas. It is a travesty. We are seeing these attacks, I think, in a partisan way against our values. Washington State certainly will keep standing strong, thanks to our governor and also our AG as well. We look forward at Commerce to working through what this might imply or might implicate for Washington State. But certainly, the requirements are not just. The requirements are not feasible, and I think that in this case, cruelty may be the outcome that they want, right? So we will do our best to defend the work in Washington State. We thank you for your leadership, and we appreciate all the work that you're doing.
Good morning. My name is Jennifer Shalinsky. I am Executive Director for Justice Housing Yakima. Justice Housing Yakima provides permanent supportive housing in Yakima County. Permanent supportive housing is a home without time limits, but it's not a home without accountability and responsibility. It's not charity. It's an evidence-based model that works. It's also a fiscally responsible solution that lessens the strain on already overburdened public systems. Permanent means residents sign a lease and have renters' rights and responsibilities just as any other tenant would. They pay rent, they agree to codes of conduct, they follow the rules. Most importantly, though, their home is their home. It's not transitional, and it's not based on conditions. Supportive means residents are connected with a case manager and referred to services that keep them housed. For example, behavioral health care, mental health care, substance use disorder treatment, employment services, education pathways, connection to community, and more. While other components of homeless crisis response systems are crucial, permanent supportive housing prevents a return to homelessness. It's the final stop on the train. It halts the revolving door. And the data is clear. 85 to 90% of people in permanent supportive housing remain housed year after year. Justice Housing Yakima's permanent supportive housing works exactly as it is intended. To prove this, I've been given permission to share some resident success stories without using their real names from the past 12 months. Gloria has cancer. Without a home, Gloria admits she wouldn't have sought proper testing to determine what was going on. She knew she wasn't feeling well, but she put it off because she said it wouldn't have mattered. She was living in her car. She had given up hope. If something was bad, she thought, well, then, oh well. Gloria is now getting treatment for her cancer. She has a safe, clean, and comfortable place to rest as she faces chemo and radiation. Evan entered inpatient treatment for his substance use disorder. How is Evan able to work his program and maintain sobriety since leaving treatment? He's able to because after successful discharge from treatment, Evan returned to his permanent home. Evan now focuses on staying sober and healing from trauma, knowing he doesn't have to exist in survival mode. Adam and Mateo both secured jobs. What led them to be able to land jobs and hold jobs? They each have a permanent home, which equals a bed for warm, quiet, restful sleep, a closet to hang their work clothes, a kitchen to cook healthy meals, and a bathroom for hot showers as they prepare for their work days. Leslie reunited with her daughter and sees her grandchildren every week. How did this incredible family reunification occur? Because Leslie has a permanent home. She has toys, puzzles, games, and most importantly, snacks in her cupboard. Her grandchildren get to hang out with Grandma, where they can make memories as she watches them grow. Gloria, Evan, Adam, Mateo, and Leslie all agree. Their homes changed everything. They aren't clients or cases. They are our neighbors in Yakima, and they are rediscovering dignity, safety, and belonging. Permanent supportive housing isn't just a program. It's the lasting difference between constant crisis and real stability. the difference between survival and the chance to build a future. And permanent supportive housing does support recovery and self-sufficiency, but it houses people first and then guides them towards that progress. Pulling back core funding for permanent supportive housing is irresponsible and dangerous. Housing providers will face impossible choices: fewer units, limited staff, longer wait lists, and most devastatingly, more people forced back into homelessness. At the heart of this is a simple principle: federal funding should support what works, and permanent supportive housing works.
Hi, my name is Latay Mitchell, and I am the lived experience voice. So I consider myself a voice for the voiceless. I'm a mother of 5 and a grandmother of 8, and I've experienced homelessness as a child and chronic bouts of homelessness as an adult. About 3 years ago, I was finally able to climb out of what I consider a bottomless pit. I experienced lots of barriers and instabilities in my life, and so I went from a ministry house to a tiny home. In doing so, once I arrived there and received services, I was like catapulted into this new space in life, and this new space included stability. How I was helped was I worked with the case manager and staff there, and I had severe test anxiety, so things where I needed to complete I wasn't able to, but with the support of ministry and case management support, I was able to get my driver's license and then also obtain my food handler's permit. And my case manager helped me make a professional email and then set up a resume update for me. In doing so, I was able to, with the suggestion of staff, become staff. And so I applied and I became staff for the same company that I was actually living in. After 11 months, I ended up getting accepted, which was a barrier before, into housing, and they paid, support services paid my moving costs for my moving truck and such, and just pushed me forward. While living there, I started an outreach where I would serve the community and feeding the community. And then it just kind of exploded from there. I stayed in the company for 2 years. I'm currently still in the company, and I work in permanent supportive housing. The change in my life has motivated my family. Some of them are working in shelters and supportive housing now and have gotten stable, entered treatment, entered into different programs through the resources that I obtained. It's not just for me about getting myself out, but it's about breaking cycles and breaking those cycles in my family's life, in my community's life, and then being that change that I want to see. So it's not just me coming out of a pit, it's me pulling others out of the pit, and I see myself connected to them like by hands, how we're all close together here, just pulling each other out. And that's ultimately what has happened. The loss of these funds would be just really traumatic for those people that are like me, that may not be computer savvy or may not have the right words, but have the drive and the desire to work. I'm not just working. I have a career now. I work 2 jobs, and then I'm also on the lived experience advisory boards for Thurston County and Washington County as well, because I moved back and forth at one time. I just want to say that I would love to see this flow continue of help and not be broken, because once we're housed, we can maintain that housing with support in place and end what I'm calling a holding pattern of homelessness for good. Thank you.
I just want to thank again everyone who's joined me up here today and also who's joined in the room today to protect what is a vital life-saving program for so many people in our community. This marks the 45th case that we have brought against the Trump administration in the last 11 and a half months. The tie that binds all of these cases together is Washington State's resilience in the face of unconstitutional or illegal actions to protect the best interest of our state and the people of our state. And we will continue to do that every day and fight and challenge those unlawful actions. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions. And Jim Bruner, since this is your first appearance at one of my press conferences. Oh, go ahead.
Why Rhode Island? Why is this filed in Rhode Island? And is it a multi-state lawsuit or is it just Washington?
So we have 21 total states, including the District of Columbia. That includes many of the states that have Democratic attorney generals, as well as the states of Pennsylvania and Kentucky. We work collaboratively on so many different cases to try to decide the right and the best venue for such an action. As you've been filing many of our cases, we filed many cases in the District of Rhode Island because we think that's the best jurisdiction to file such a claim.
And this is filing a lawsuit, but are you seeking a temporary restraining order or something like that?
Yeah, not a temporary restraining order, but a preliminary injunction. Anybody else? Anything online? Okay. Go ahead, Jim.
I guess. You talk about this cliff that's come up and you have to wait putting up these regulations, and there's potential, I guess, for people to be put on the streets. I mean, are the organizations that work for the state prepared to fill that gap on a temporary basis if things don't go as quickly as you hope here? In other words, is there a real imminent threat, or is it more of a longer-term thing if this policy is held?
Well, and I'm happy to let others weigh in as well, but there is no possible way that the state of Washington or all of these organizations could fill the holes that are going to be created should this NOFO action be allowed to take place. Everyone knows, the state is in a tight budget situation. So many of our locals and nonprofits have an exponentially worse budget situation. When the administration tries to pull this level of funding from Washington State and many states across the country, that is money that cannot be replaced immediately. We would, of course, do everything we can to fill that void, but it would not be able to fill that hole, and there will be a crisis if that money was to lapse.
Can you give us a feel for how much money is at stake? Like how much does the state and these organizations bring in?
Across the country, I'm not sure. It's $120 million here in the state of Washington.
That's right.
Okay, seeing no more questions, thank you again for coming, and have a great Thanksgiving, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you. That was really great.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Good. Okay. I'll tell myself that because I'm an own boss,